So one of the things that comes up all the time when we talk to people is that changing diets, whether you're doing this for health, whether you're doing this because you want to be vegan and you're doing it for the animals or the planet or your health or a combination of all of those things, is that changing diet is more than just changing diet, because what we eat is not just about nutrition. A lot of it is about the traditions we formed with our families when we were growing up and the associations we make with food and comfort and social aspects. And when it comes to the holidays, all of that just gets amplified.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, if you're cooking for the crowd, it's your turn to host or whatever, you got to make something that everyone's going to want to enjoy that seems to fit in with the tradition. If you're going there, they may not know what to do for your diet. And so there's a lot of stress that gets added on top of just having the standard traditional Thanksgiving or holiday gathering. So I've come up with a set of recipes that we did, and we've hosted several times. And some of these look traditional, and they fit in with it, and they fit the diet, which is our whole food, plant-based. And, of course, I had to change our main course because we're not doing the turkey.
Exactly.
But I came up with something that's just as elegant and that people really love. So I think we should probably get into
why don't we dive in and go through. This is going to be a complete holiday meal. Everything from the main course, the sides, and a dessert. Obviously, you can make the whole thing, or you can make bits and pieces, whatever works for you.
Or use these as an idea and make your own.
Well, yeah, and that's a big part of the way that we cook. Everything that you see today is not so much a recipe as a starting off point. If you want to change some of the ingredients up, and we'll probably put in a few ideas about variations as we go along.
As we go, and so make sort of the fit. So we're going to start off with our Cranberry Orange Relish. Now this is a really simple, you can do this ahead of time. It's got the basics in it, so cranberries. We are going to use a little bit of salt, some sugar, some orange juice, fresh squeezed or concentrated. And then for this I'm using tangerines for the rinds. So just peel them off, wash any of the wax off of them.
Mm-hmm. Tangerines or are those clementines?
I think it depends on what's on market.
Yeah, I mean, the point is you can use just about any citrus you wanted, right? If you wanted to put a little lemon or lime in there to change up the flavor, that's cool too.
Yeah, and I just cut nice little inch-long strips with these, so they're like about 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch, just nice strips, something that's easily to eat. And now we just put everything together. So we have a half cup of water. If I was smart about this, I would have done the orange juice first, then use the water in that to rinse out the pan or the
measuring cup.
The measuring cup, because as you can see, things stick. Oh well, live and learn.
Well, so the message here is that if you don't get it perfect, you can probably still recover.
Yes. Okay.
So these are just frozen cranberries, frozen whole cranberries, right?
Yep.
And that's one of those ingredients that I think people see, and if they haven't used them before, it can be a little intimidating, and they're really not.
No, it's really simple. This is, I believe, a half cup of sugar.
That'll all be in the notes. Yeah, that's
it. That's in the recipe. Yeah, it's a half cup of sugar, a little bit of salt. And what you need to do is you need to bring this up to heat or to boil, and you want to dissolve that sugar. So now time will have elapsed a little faster here. So, but
it may take you a little longer to get stuff up to the boil. I think one of the things that people need to realize is those cranberries are tart.
Yes.
So having that sugar in there is really important. If you want to use a different sweetener, if you want to use maple syrup or agave or even an artificial sweetener like sucralose, not sucralose, erythritol, which is the one that we like now, those are all okay. And again, this is an example of how you can mix and match and just use this as a base recipe.
Right. And then just pour those in. We're going to let this come up to a boil. And once that comes up to the boil, we'll drop it down to simmer. Oh, that's right. I did find a couple of bad ones. That happens.
Right.
So.
Now the trick here is that you just want to simmer these until those cranberries start to burst.
Yep.
Right? And they will start to break down. And the cranberries have a lot of natural pectin in them.
Right.
So you don't need to put any thickeners or anything in that. The cranberries will thicken themselves.
Yeah. And it doesn't take long. This whole thing took, I think, about 10 minutes start to finish. So they're only on the heat for about 8 to 9 minutes.
Right.
And you just cook until you're satisfied.
Until they've broken down to the degree that you want. So if you like your cranberries a little chunky, just cook them until they just basically burst. If you like them a little bit more smooth, you can cook them a little further. If you like them really smooth, you can run this through the blender before it all sets up. That is the one trick. Once you put this in the fridge, it's going to turn into jelly. So don't try and blend it after it's turned into jelly.
Well, that's why I usually call this a relish, but not a sauce.
And the other thing about this is you could add cinnamon, you could add cloves, you could add nutmeg, you could add any number of things to just make the spicing the way you want. If you don't like the orange with it, you don't have to add the orange. You could just do this in sugar, water, and cranberries and just make a really plain cranberry sauce.
Yeah, and as you said, all the spices that are a combination there.
Right.
Okay, you see, this is about 8 minutes in.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that you're looking at here is that as it starts to thicken up, you'll see that as you are drawing that spatula across the bottom, it's kind of holding its shape. Mm-hmm. And that's a good indication that you're in pretty good shape there. Keep the heat kind of low because you don't want to burn it. You've got sugar in there.
Yeah, this is at the simmer level. So.
And depending on the power of your stove, this might go faster. It might go a little bit slower. But don't be in a rush because it is sugar, and sugar will burn if you go too fast.
Yep. And now we'll have a chance to see what this looks like. So we started with whole frozen cranberries, and now I've got some nice little bits and chunks.
And you said frozen cranberries, but depending on where you get your cranberries, they may be in the refrigerated section, they may be in the frozen section. They're just whole, natural cranberries.
Yeah. But they do freeze well. You can save them the next year. So
yes.
And now just let it cool, and we're done. So yeah, I mean, that's a really simple, that's a traditional recipe right there. Right. So we're going to go to our next one here. It's going to be our holiday gravy. So this is our fall holiday gravy. This one, there's a lot of ingredients to it. Don't get overwhelmed, but it's really simple. Again, this could be done in advance. We've got, that was squash.
That was butternut squash, isn't it?
Butternut squash.
But you can basically use any squash that you have. Now, the nice thing about butternut squash is some people find it kind of intimidating because it's hard. But you can get it already cubed up.
Yeah.
If you want to. So you've got the butternut squash, you've got carrots, you've got celery. Onions. What are those? Potatoes?
Those are golden potatoes, and they're about the size of my fist.
And then you've got some vegetable stock there as well.
Yes.
Right? And you can make your own. I think we've got a recipe out that's there someplace, or that may be a future video that's coming.
That's coming.
Or you can just buy the stuff in cartons.
Yeah. And then it's just put everything into your pressure cooker. Mm-hmm. The spices on that. Oh, that was some thyme, some sage. I think actually I used poultry seasoning on that.
Yeah, I mean, what I always associate with this is you can use poultry seasoning. You can use, sage, rosemary, thyme, all those sorts of things. Again, look at your holiday traditions. Look at the kinds of flavors that you associate with that. For me, I remember, my parents always got the Bell's brand poultry seasoning in the little cardboard box. I think it even comes in those little cardboard boxes now. And I think we went through a whole box of that every Thanksgiving because it went into everything. There's kind of a funny story about this. We did a holiday get-together for a bunch of people. Might have been the first or second year that
It was our first year
of not doing a turkey.
Yes.
And one of our guests insisted on bringing a turkey, and that's its own story.
Yeah.
But the people who had the turkey didn't want the turkey gravy. They wanted this gravy because this tasted more like holiday gravy than their traditional turkey gravy did.
Yeah, they said this tasted more like turkey gravy than turkey gravy.
Right. And I think this stuff is really great. It's great on mashed potatoes. It's great on
rice, anything.
And the stuffing that we're going to show a little bit later on. Yeah. It's really tasty. So I mean, it's a lot of ingredients, but you just dump everything in the pot.
You put everything in there. You put it on your pressure cooker setting, and it goes for 10 minutes. And I do a natural release on that. So it'll probably take, depending on your pressure cooker or Instapot or whatever you're using, it could take about an hour probably for it to run a cycle.
But really, you just put it in there, press the button, and just come back to it when the pressure has gone down.
Right. You can go and do other things. In fact, I did. Mm-hmm. So, I think I did the cranberries at this point. So
then you're just putting it in the blender, and whether you have a blender like we have, whether you've got a stick blender, whatever you have, you just want to blend this until it's smooth.
Yeah.
And if it's a little too thick, you can add water, you can add vegetable stock. Mm-hmm. You can taste it and adjust the seasoning if you like a little salt, a little pepper. As we said, poultry seasoning.
If you need to add a little bit more poultry seasoning. So
exactly. But this is really versatile and I think really tasty.
We can go through this quite a bit. In fact, this was a double batch. So, and to be honest, after the filming of this, I think we're almost through it.
So now you're giving away all of our secrets. We do the voiceover a little bit afterwards. And we eat in between. And there you go. You just put it in a nice gravy boat that sits on the table. It looks really nice. And it is really, really tasty.
Easy to reheat.
Yeah, this keeps in the refrigerator for at least a week.
Oh, yes.
Easily.
So, all right. So that was, as you can see, the standard traditional style foods, and they're fairly easy. They fit into any of the diets.
They go really quickly, and with the exception of the stuffing, they're all gluten-free. Yep. They're all whole food. They're all plant-based. They're all oil-free. And if you wanted to use a gluten-free bread in the stuffing, then that would be gluten-free as well.
Yeah.
And you can do all of this in a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have anything to thaw. You don't have to find a place in the refrigerator to put a giant bird.
Yeah.
This is really simple.
Yes.
So speaking of the stuffing.
Oh, yeah.
Here comes the stuffing.
Bring on the stuffing. So now I did I call this sort of a southern cornbread stuffing because it's a mixture of whole wheat bread and cornbread. So as you can see, I got the cornbread. I have the regular bread, and I actually baked my own.
But you don't have to.
No.
The reality is you could use any bread that you wanted. If you like cornbread, use cornbread. If you
want to go non-gluten, you can use a non-gluten bread.
Use a gluten-free bread. You can use all white bread, all whole wheat bread, cornbread. You could throw some rice into this or any
Yeah.
kind of grain.
So,
You could also throw fruit into this, either dried fruit or fresh fruit if you wanted to put apples, pears, anything like that.
oh, yes. And we've done the onion again. Again, it's a whole onion, some celery, some mushroom. There's more mushroom on the side. I'm going to give away my camera stuff here. There was more than would fit in the bowl.
But you've got the right amount of mushroom.
I've got the right amount of mushroom, and it's written down on the recipe.
And if you like mushrooms, you can put more mushrooms in, or you can put a mix of mushrooms, not just the button mushrooms that we have there. If you don't like mushrooms, don't put them in.
Yeah, it's real simple. There's also some garlic, and I believe I used Italian seasoning on this one. So that's got a mixture of the rosemary, the thyme, and oregano.
Some marjoram or oregano.
Yeah.
But again, if you wanted to use poultry seasoning in here, that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Use the flavors that you like. If you like heat, you could put a little bit of chili in this as well.
As you see, I'm cutting the bread there, and I put my finger there, and you can see about the size that I'm cutting the pieces into.
Now you let this bread sit out overnight, or you toast it a little bit in the oven because you want the bread to be a little bit dry for this, right?
The cornbread I let sit overnight. The regular bread, I actually toasted that in the oven. Mm-hmm. So just put a pan on and put it on low heat. If you got a toaster oven, you could put it in that. It was really simple. I also grabbed, I think you saw, they pulled the squeeze bottle of water there. That will help with my onions start to stick. So.
And if you are still uncomfortable sauteing vegetables without oil, look at some of our earlier videos. Brian goes through that in great detail. But essentially, it's start with low heat. Don't crank the heat up. Go nice and slow. And have a little bit of water standing by. So if things do start to stick or burn, you can put a little water in, and the steam will help release everything.
Yeah. In fact, I think I do that at the end of this. So something to look forward to.
There we go.
All right, so off to the toaster.
So you're going to get a little color on those onions, and then I think you're going to add the celery.
Got my celery.
And let that go for a little bit.
Yeah, celery will cook quickly, so will the mushroom.
Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that you're going to want to wait to put the mushrooms in is the mushrooms tend to release a lot of liquid.
Yeah.
If you put those in too early, you'll have all that liquid and the onions won't brown.
Right. And there's my extra mushrooms. Just a little bit more.
So once again,
I kind of overloaded the pan on this one.
Yeah, but mushrooms cook down quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
So if you like garlic, throw in some garlic. If you don't like garlic, don't. Yeah. If you love garlic, put more garlic in.
Which I kind of did.
Yeah.
So this is about twice as much garlic. But
again, the recipes are a starting point. Adjust the flavors to what you like.
Recipes are suggestion. Baking is formula.
Yes.
So that's pretty much the rule. Oh, also, you can see there I've got the spice grinder.
Right. And that spice grinder is just one of those really inexpensive coffee grinders that just has the little whirly blade in it. Nothing complicated. And what are you going to use that for?
Well, actually, you can see this coming up here real quick. Some of the spices, especially the rosemary, is kind of almost twig-like. And as you can see, I'm trying to get a hold of a piece here. You can see it's really hard and like a twig. And it doesn't really break down when you cook it. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do is I like to grind it. And this gets it into a powder. It mixes well, and you don't end up with like little bits of toothpick in your food.
Sure. And that's a neat little trick. If you've got a blender like this or a grinder like this, just turn it upside down. tap the powder into the lid.
You can see there's no big pieces or anything in there. It's all nicely powdered.
But using those whole spices and then grinding them
Yep.
fresh, you just get so much more flavor out of them.
Mm-hmm. So now there's the bread out of the oven. Double check your size. That's what I do here. Is I'm looking at them, and some of them are bunched together. Some look a little too big, so I kind of crushed them down, tore them apart. With the cornbread as well. The cornbread was just crumpled by hand, and you can have big pieces, little pieces. Just try to make them smaller than bite size, and all they do is they fill up the dressing. They fill all the nice little nooks and crannies, so to speak.
They just bulk it out. And the cornbread, I think you used a mix, and that's
Yeah.
what you can use a mix. You can buy some of that. This is kind of the corn muffin style of cornbread.
Mm-hmm.
Find a mix that you like. Use a recipe that you like.
If you've got a family recipe, use it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I overloaded my pan, I decided this time I'm not going to just try to stir inside the baked dish. So I got a nice big pan that I could get in there and mix with.
Mm-hmm. So you're going to take all those sautéed veggies and the spices or the herbs.
Now
mix that in with the bread.
Everything comes together now. And here you can see there's just a little bit of stuff on the pan. So it's a little bit of water, and it'll come right up. I don't want to lose that good stuff.
Exactly, yeah. As long as it's not black, as long as it's just nice golden brown, you do want to get that out because that's flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got that vegetable stock that we talked about earlier.
Yep. Right now I'm just trying to get the solids together.
Yep.
And this is a good time to practice your folding techniques.
So there you go.
Now, here's the tricky part. You can't just pour all of this in. You want to pour little bits in at a time and mix it in and let the stuffing sort of tell you when it's had enough. And what you want is you want everything to get moist. You spent time drying the bread out. Now you're soaking it.
Right.
And that's because they're going to act like sponges and pull the stock into them and give them some flavor. And you want to do this slowly. You don't want to make soup here. So just add a little bit at a time, mix it in.
So you want it to be wet, but you don't want it to be overly mushy.
You don't, yeah.
And if it doesn't take all the stock, don't try and force
Right.
it. If it needs more stock, you can add a little extra stock, a little extra water, whatever you like.
Yeah, I let this sit for a few minutes and then took another look.
Mm-hmm.
And
You can kind of see the consistency now.
yeah. Also, I think I put this in the recipe, that save that stock, because as it's cooking, if it starts looking like it's too dry,
Mm-hmm.
you can add that in. So it's not like it all has to go in at the same time. So.
But this, it really comes together and it binds together and it really makes a nice stuffing. And as we said earlier, you can add whatever you like. I know we've done dried fruit in the past. We've done fresh fruit in the past. I think we've chopped up an apple and put it in.
Well, we've done, I think, dried apricots.
Mm-hmm.
We've put cranberries in, dried cranberries.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's no problem with that. Now, we've been exchanging the name on this. We've been calling it dressing. We've been calling it stuffing. And I don't think there's really a difference.
I don't know. To me, dressing was this, the stuff that you put in a pan, and stuffing was the stuff that you actually put inside a bird.
Yeah.
And so we don't we never did stuffing.
Yes.
But now we definitely don't do stuffing because we don't have anything to stuff it in.
One of the things, now I grew up with this and it's old, but I was always taught you put the shiny side down or toward the cooked item on your foil. So you always put the shiny side toward what you're cooking.
Oh, you're opening controversy.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I'm sure this will be the one thing that we get comments on. But there it is when it's done. And it looks very traditional, at least to me, it looks very traditional.
Yeah, and it was basically about 30 minutes in with the lid on, with the foil on, and then pull it off, and then it was about another 20 minutes.
Right.
And if you see it's getting too dry yet, it's more of the dressing, and if it's
more of the stock,
or more of the stock, yes. And if it's cooked through, and you can use either a temperature probe, and I try to go for about 200.
By temperature probe, for people who don't have laboratory equipment in the kitchen, you mean a thermometer, right?
Yes. Or you could take a skewer and put it in, and as long as it's like moist but not wet. So, all right. So, and again, dressing is a traditional item for people to have it at Thanksgiving. So, so we'll pull up our next item here. So, excuse my notes.
We've got our main course. So this is the one place where we really kind of go in a different direction. Right? We're not going to have a bird. We're not going to have a ham. We're not going to have a prime rib. So what are we going to have as a main course?
We are going to have acorn squash with mushroom risotto. And risotto is a labor of love, and you will see that in here. So we've had stock. We've got some little bit of white wine. There's some nutritional yeast, some garlic, some spices, mushroom, and onion again. And you can pick whatever squash you'd like. There's an acorn squash here, and there's a delicata
squash. Right?
I was gonna say,
but yeah, if you like butternut squash, if you like acorn squash, basically you just want a squash that's going to have a cavity in it, because we do like to serve the risotto in that cavity later on. Now you're using a heavy knife here because we happen to have a heavy knife.
Please be careful.
Yes. The thing I've seen people do too, if you don't have a heavy knife, is they'll get an inexpensive like coping saw from the hardware store and use that. That can be a really nice way if you are intimidated by squash to be able to open those without having to use a hatchet, because that scares some people.
I was taking a look at the ribs, and if you saw before while I was doing that, I was trying to find a side that looked like it would sit flat, and this is why, because this way, if I decide I want to put something in that cavity to cook with, something to steam, like some stock or whatever, I want it to be a cup, so it actually holds. So I was trying to see how it would sit.
Now you're using one of our kitchen finds here.
Yes.
This is something I think I got a number of years ago. It's a butter curler. And I have no idea why I bought it. But it turns out to be really handy for scraping the seeds out of squash. Most of you probably don't have a butter curler, but you can use a tablespoon. You can use whatever you like to just scrape those seeds out.
Yeah, and I'm going to use the delicata on another video. So,
yes.
All right. So real simple. You're going to start with the acorn squash face down. That's 30 minutes in the oven. I believe 400 degrees.
That's all in the recipe.
That's all in the recipe. And while that's cooking, I'll take care of my onion. And you just want to have a nice fine dice to this, because this is the risotto portion of it. And so you want to have the nice small grains be more to the dominant texture.
So you dicing that onion almost to the point where it's about the same as the size of
The
a
grains.
piece of rice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you can see it's pretty fine there.
Mhm.
So just pick whatever method you prefer.
So you've got the onions, you've got mushrooms. Again, you can add whatever you want
Yes.
to this.
It is mushroom risotto, so
Right. Now, this is another one of the little tricks that we like to use. This is just an inexpensive, I think we got this at a drugstore someplace, and it's just a little thermostatically controlled hot pot.
hot pot.
And what you'll see as Brian starts to make the risotto is you need to add the liquid to the rice slowly, but the liquid needs to be warm. So you don't have to, you could do this just on another burner on the stove, but then you have to watch that and make sure it doesn't boil, but it doesn't get too cold. This just makes it really easy.
Yeah.
But you don't need it.
No, you can use something else. One of the things that I was reading about that is the having the stock hot also helps the risotto take in the moisture,
Mm-hmm.
and the easier that it can take in that fluid, the creamier it's going to get.
Right. So this is, I guess, a good time as you're sauteing the onion here to really talk about the rice for a little while. Risotto, you have to use a rice that's intended for risotto. And the most common one is arborio rice, and that's
Extra starchy.
right. It's got this starch that will release. There are a couple of others that are appropriate, but arborio is going to be the one that's easiest to get. You can get it in some specialty food stores. You can get it often in the sort of ethnic Italian aisle in a big grocery store, or you can buy it online.
Mhm.
But you can't just use your normal big bag of white rice. It's just not going to work. It doesn't have that starch.
No. You can't use like the jasmine or the basmati or.
Those are all wonderful rices,
Oh, yeah.
but they just won't work for this dish.
Yeah.
So here you're taking your mushrooms and your onions and you're sauteing them down.
Yes.
Again, going nice and slow,
Mm-hmm.
no oil. You've got your little bit of water standing by, so in case things get too hot.
And more garlic. Can't have enough garlic.
We can't have enough garlic. If you don't like garlic, that's fine. We are not going to judge you.
So. And yeah, so I mean, like I said, the dishes are not complicated. They are. This one is more time intensive than anything because you do have to go slow.
This is probably the most intensive in that it takes some time and it's not time that you can just walk away.
Right.
Once you add the rice, especially, you have to be pretty attentive.
Yep. You can't walk away for, I would say, no more than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because of the heavy starches that will be in that rice, they tend to stick, and once they stick to the bottom, then they start to burn.
And both of us have learned this the hard way. I think I said that right. That it's tempting to add the liquid really fast just to get it over with. I know this sounds kind of poetic, but let the rice talk to you. The rice will let you know when it is ready for more stock.
Mm-hmm.
The rice will let you know when it has had enough.
Right.
So again, the recipe is just a starting point. You may need more stock. You may need less stock.
Yes.
Just watch the rice. It depends on how old it is, on how moist it is, on how moist it is in the kitchen that day. Mm-hmm. Just all sorts of factors.
Yeah, the recipe here has about 8 cups of stock. I don't think I used all 8 cups. I think I used 6 to 7. Mm-hmm. So I didn't use all of it, but having it even for later. So if it looks like the rice continued to absorb some, if you needed to thin out this afterwards, you still could.
Exactly.
So it's not. Don't get rid of it. Don't think it's.
So now there's a little bit of technique here. I notice you're putting the rice into the dry pan.
Yes.
And you are kind of toasting that rice a little bit, drying it out.
Mm-hmm. And you help with some of the flavors on that. It gives it almost a nutty flavor to that. And this takes a little while, and you just have to go through and make sure. As you can see, I'm trying to get the aroma, and I'm using that as my key. So it's becoming fragrant. I learned to talk, and I think it's ready. So
you're going to start with water.
no, this is actually wine. This is some white wine. It's a half a cup of white wine.
And again, if you're not a wine drinker, if you don't want wine in your food, it's optional.
Right. Now, the alcohol will cook off. So if that's your concern, this will cook off.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is your first liquid that you add, and this is the first thing that you're looking for it to absorb. So you can see when it first went in, it was kind of liquidy and all that. Now it's almost to the point where it's like wet sand, and that's because the rice is starting to pick up the liquids.
So one of the things I'll point out is as you're doing this, you're keeping that rice moving.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's dried out, you're going to put that first addition of stock.
Yeah, and the first one will be 1 cup. After that, we're doing half cups.
Okay. So you're using a half cup ladle there. So
Yep.
the first one you're doing 2 half cups or a cup.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're keeping that moving. You're kind of coaxing that starch out of the rice that's going to make that creamy.
Yeah.
It's interesting. People who have not had risotto before will swear there must be tons of melted cheese in it. And even if you're making this in a very traditional way, you may add a little cheese at the end for flavor, but that creaminess is not from butter or cream or melted
milk.
Cheese or anything like that. It is that starch coming out of the rice.
Mm-hmm. Now this, some time has passed here. We're probably at about 40 minutes here. So I've already had to refill my little stock pot there. But as you can see, it's puffing up. Mm-hmm. So you can see that the dish is coming together. And like I said, you just can't walk away, at least not for more than a minute or so. And it does, like I said, this is a labor of love. I started getting hand cramps, I think, at one point here.
Use the heaviest bottom pot that you have. That'll distribute the heat nicely. And the stiffest, sturdiest stirring device, whether it's a wooden spoon. I think a wooden spoon is kind of traditional. And a good heat-resistant rubber spatula like we're using. Yeah. And the other thing I'll point out is, remember, you sauteed the onions and mushrooms at the beginning, but you pulled those out.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to, like there's a wonderful version you can do of this where we saute onions and asparagus. And so you can make an asparagus risotto. So you can take this, again, in almost any direction that you want to.
Now, here I'm tasting it. Now, what you want is you're looking for sort of that al dente texture.
So you want it to have a little tooth to it. You don't want it to be crunchy.
No, you don't want to hear any snaps or pops or anything like that. But you do want to have a little bit of bite to it. It's not mush. It's not, oatmeal. So it's got a little bit of body to it. It can stand up.
Now, something that we should point out. This is definitely best when you first make it.
Oh, yeah.
You can reheat it.
Mm-hmm.
Heat it gently. But it's not going to have that same texture.
No. So that's why I've sort of saved this for last in my list. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everything else on here, with the exception of the dessert that follows this,
But the dessert you could make. In fact, you need to make ahead of time because it needs to set for a while. But we'll talk about that when we do the dessert.
I put that at the end just because it was dessert. But yeah, everything else you can do ahead of time. This is the one thing you want to do at that day.
Now you're adding nutritional yeast here.
This gives me your cheesiness. So I think other recipes have used like Parmesan at this point or something like that. But I've added no other liquids to this. So there's no milk or cream or nut milks or anything like that. So all of the creaminess is going to come from the risotto rice.
Right. The starch in the rice plus that vegetable stock.
Yeah. Now, again, it was 30 minutes in the oven. Flip them. Do 20 minutes again. And now I'm just checking. And they're nice and tender. The knife just slides right through them. And that's it. So at this point, it would be just put them out on the plate or out on the table to serve as a plate.
And if you want to do something fancy, you can put the risotto in those half squashes, and it's just a nice presentation.
Yeah, we've just found that after the first time, it was just easier to have that because then people can select how much of each they wanted.
Because a half an acorn squash is a lot of food.
Yes. Even a quarter can sometimes be a lot. But going back for more of that risotto, that's and you'll see my plate up.
That's right.
Okay.
So it's time for dessert.
Oh, yes. And a lot of people going for the pumpkin pies and all of that. This is something you can whip together nice and easy and fast and have it for anything. So the pumpkin mousse, we're going to use our pumpkin puree. We've got some extra firm silken tofu. So this is the really smooth stuff.
This is the stuff that you find not in the refrigerated section, in the dry goods section. It's the shelf-stable silken tofu.
Yeah, and you're looking for that silken because the silken will be that nice smooth. You want that creamy. The cottony, which is usually found in the refrigerator, that has a little bit more body, and you use that for other things.
Other things, yeah.
Now, usually to get it out of the can, I found that if you just sort of pop the other side, just give a little bit, break the vacuum, so to speak.
Let a little air in behind it.
Yep. Whoop, there we go.
Slides right out.
Yeah. So it makes it really easy. I'm also using maple syrup on this, so this is sort of my sweetener. You want to drain the tofu, and this is a fine mesh strainer that you can get. Maple syrup. This is a plunger cup. So if you've got something that's like sticky or thick, something that will not pour like out of a measuring cups, these are really good at being able to measure a quarter cup or half cup or even 2 cups of something, because you can just push it right out.
Again, not something you absolutely need, but they do come in handy. Yeah. And then what have you got going there? Pumpkin pie spice?
I'm using pumpkin pie spice on this one rather than just like the cinnamon and cloves.
But again, you can use whatever you like. You could put a little splash of vanilla extract in this as well. Yes.
And you can just use the food processor. You don't need the blender or anything like that.
If you can get the food processor to
got to make sure everything's lined up. They've got all the safeties in here. So
you're just gonna blitz this until it's nice and smooth.
Yep. Now you do have to scrape down the sides. Now I've done blending, scraping 3 times. So blend, scrape, blend, scrape, blend, scrape.
Basically, whatever it takes just to get it all smooth and all the parts together.
Yeah. So, and I actually skipped through all of that in the video here.
Well, yes.
You don't need to see me doing everything. But...
and then you can either put this in one big bowl.
Put it in a bowl and put it in the refrigerator. Let it chill. I would put some saran wrap on top and actually push it down onto the surface,
Right.
because that will prevent any skin from forming. I'm tasting to make sure I got all the spices I want. So you can put them in a bowl like that, or you can put them in individual serving cups.
Right.
And these are nice little cups we got somewhere. And here's an old pastry trick. So this is, rather than trying to spoon into that small opening,
And have to clean up all the edges of the
Yeah.
bowls. That's just a Ziploc sandwich bag or a quart bag. Or,
yeah, that's just a nice little plastic bag. Got to get that blade out of the way, though.
Careful, don't cut yourself.
Yes. Again, please be careful. So, now, little trick. You slide your hand under the little pocket there.
Right. So you cuff the bag back on itself.
Right. That helps if you get messy.
Mhm.
Everything's on the inside. And you can also use that little ridge to hold the bag
Yep.
while you're filling it.
So you get your filling in there. And you can go back and get all of it.
You can refill.
So
Now, I like to squeeze the air out.
Mhm.
So, lay it down and then just
Work the air out. And then
find a nice corner. And this is going to be your pastry bag. So,
but the nice thing about this is you don't have to clean it afterwards.
No. And I would start with small openings. Now this is, I think, about a little over a 1/4 inch across.
Mhm.
So don't go too big because you don't need it. And then it's just squeeze and fill. And it's nice and clean. There's no mess. You don't have
And
to-
this, because you want this to get nice and cold, this you could do the day before.
Right.
I wouldn't do it I wouldn't do it a week before, but you could easily do this the day before.
That's if it lasts.
Well, you might want to make a double batch if you do it the day before, because
Oh yeah, and if you find it's not coming out or you've lost the tip, you just lay it out and squeegee sort of it back to the
corner.
to the opening, and so there you go. It's also nice when you have any leftovers here. You can just take the bag and put it in maybe like a plastic container or something, and you don't worry about it drying out. Just got that little corner.
One of the great things about this recipe too is that once you have that tofu, that silken tofu, and whatever sweetener you want,
Mhm.
you can add pumpkin, you can add melted chocolate, you can add vanilla extract, you can add whatever you like and make essentially whatever flavor mousse you like. You could add
You want to do
blended
strawberry?
strawberries.
Yeah.
Now you're using a non-dairy cream. I think this is a coconut cream.
This is a coconut whipped cream that is out on the market. So this is all plant-based. Give it a good shake. And then at this point, you can just have it plain, or you can put whatever toppings you want.
You got a little grated chocolate there.
I've got some crushed or chopped chocolate. This is like an extra dark. Put that on. Then I've got
Nutmeg.
Nutmeg. Here we go. And they're just little things. This is a little grater we have, and a little goes a long way.
If you don't have a nutmeg grater, you can get pre-ground nutmeg.
Yes.
It's not
And,
doesn't have the same flavor.
and here I just used the regular pumpkin spice that I actually made in the mix. So
You used in the mix.
that I used.
I didn't even think about it, but this just occurred to me right now. You could take a pistachio and chop it up too. You could chop pistachio or almond or whatever you like on top.
So there's, pretty easy and simple, and everything
Yeah.
looks traditional.
It's a Thanksgiving meal you really can make in a day.
Yeah, and then it's just lay everything out, and here we go. I've actually cut the the acorn squash into quarters, and then a big bowl of risotto. And I think I'll go for 2 scoops. But yeah, and we just lay everything out here buffet style, and people get to come in and go through what they want. The first slice is always the toughest.
Always the toughest. But, you know, this is a great way to have something that is based on a lot of holiday traditions, but is moving in that healthier direction. It's all plant-based. It's all oil-free. It's all vegan. So whether you're doing this for health reasons, whether you're doing it for humanistic reasons, whether you're doing it for ecological reasons, or, as I say, all of the above,
well, and
start some new traditions.
And except for the stuffing on this, it's gluten-free as well.
Right.
So,
and as we said, you could make a gluten-free version of the stuffing really easily.
So I hope everyone enjoyed this. I hope they enjoy trying them out.
And when you do try them out, put some comments down there. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what worked for you. If you tried any variations, let us know about that. And if there are things you would like to see in the future, let us know as well.
Yeah. So until next time, I'd like to thank you for watching our video, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, and thank you to the Indianapolis Public Library for making all of this possible.
Yes. And so take care.